Welcome back, headphone friends. MrAyrit here, and today we've got a pretty big video, and honestly this is one that I've been putting off making for a little while, even though I've had all three of these headphones here, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a comparison today between the OG Focal Clears, the Arya Stealth Edition, and the 8XX. Now, why I've been a little concerned about making this video is because I feel like it's a big one, right? These are all, let's just call them all $1,000 headphones. I realize that that's not really correct, but that's just kind of the way I'm thinking about them. I bought my OG Clears for like $650, but new, they're like $900 if you can still get them. The Arya Stealth I didn't buy. This was sent to me by Hifiman a while ago, but you can find them on the used market now for about $1,000. And their typical price now seems to be around $1,300. And then the 8XX, of course, initially retailed for around like $1,100-ish or so, but I don't think you can buy them new anymore, and on the used market you can get them from $600 to $700 on a regular basis. So again, really, and I bought mine for I think $650 or $675, I can't remember, under $700. So they're not all real equal. I mean, the Arya is definitely still the more expensive headphone out of all these, but let's just say they're comparable. They're in the same ballpark, okay? And so I think these are three headphones that a lot of people are going to look at if they're coming from like a $500 headphone, $500 headphone. They're looking for the next step up. These are going to be three of the main contenders that people will be looking at. And so I didn't want to screw this video up. I wanted to make sure that I did it fair and that I was being, obviously I feel like you have to be subjective when you do this, but I wanted to make sure that I was giving them each a chance to show what they could really do. And the best way, I listened to all these headphones kind of on and off over the last couple of months, and I decided that the best way to do this comparison would be to pick 4 songs and just listen to them back to back, right? And just make some notes on just how I perceive things as I was listening to them, and just which ones I preferred, and what their strengths and weaknesses were in each of these songs. Now, the songs, they're not like my test tracks or anything like that. I'm not really like a test track type of person. These are just they're 4 different songs, and they're all just earworms of mine from the last year, just songs that I could listen to over and over again, because when I'm doing this type of stuff, right, I'm doing it for fun, and I don't necessarily want to listen to the same song every single time I'm testing a headphone or anything like that. So I just picked 4 of the songs that I just really enjoyed from this past year, and thought I could do it that way. And so we'll go through each of these songs, and then I'll give you my impressions of each of the headphones, just in the order that I listen to them, which I kind of switched up the order that I listen to them in each time, just to not try to like favor any of them or any of that. So with that being said, kind of a longer introduction, but let's dive into the songs and to my impressions of each headphone while I was listening. So song number 1 was Wish I Knew You by the Revivalist, and this is kind of an interesting, like, maybe jam bandy type of a song, just a really cool track, a lot going on in it. And the first headphone I listened to this was the 8XX. So the notes that I put down as I was listening to this with the 8XX were, I thought that immediately I noticed it was wide and super well separated, as the 8 series is known for. I did make a note that there's a tambourine, and it seemed really pronounced with the 8XX, but not like in a bad way, not like it was overdone. It really stood out to me on the 8XX more than the other 2 headphones. And I would say that like the vocals, I thought they were good, great detail and everything, but they definitely weren't like stealing the show. It was a very well balanced presentation throughout the frequency range. I didn't note anything standing out as like drawing my attention away from just enjoying the song and just being into it. So 8XX was great. I noticed a little more of that tambourine, again, a little more treble than maybe the other 2 headphones. For the Clears, I thought immediately I noticed there was more mid-bass, and I noticed that it was much smaller and not as well separated as the 8XX. I thought that the vocalists seemed to be more intimate, a little bit closer, and seemed to be maybe more focused than on the Arya or on the 8XX. Like the track with the clears seemed to be more focused on the vocalist. I thought that the tambourine wasn't as pronounced. I also thought that it was a little bit smoother on the clears, like things just didn't have the same edge or bite to them as they did on the 8XX. Now, whether that's good or bad, that's a little bit more subjective, but for me, I think I like that little bit more of a bite, a little bit more of an edge to things. It just feels like you're getting a little bit more of a detail with the 8XX than on the clears, especially in those upper frequencies. I didn't think that I could pick out individual elements near as well on the clears as I could on the 8XX. None of that is to say that I didn't enjoy the song on the clears. I still thought it sounded great on the clears, just not as wide, and I couldn't pick out individual elements as well as on the 8XX. And so the Arya Stealth, this was kind of interesting in that I found that it was wide, like the 8XX, but also a bit smoother, like the clears. The Arya's definitely had more bass than the other two headphones, noticeably more bass than the other two headphones. And I would say, like, out of these three headphones, really the Arya is the one where you can, like, feel the bass. You can hear the bass on the clear and the 8XX, but just you don't get that same like slam and impact as you do on the Arya Stealth Edition. I thought for me, the Arya was just the least engaging of the three headphones. Just everything felt a little bit more distant. So it kind of loses the intimacy that the clear has. While the 8XX I feel still maintains some of that while being wide, I feel like the Arya is just more wide and it sounds start kind of further out. Whereas the 8XX you get kind of the whole range, and the clear is just smaller in general. So that was kind of my observation. The Arya is still really well separated like the 8XX. It just doesn't get that. You don't get that same intimacy factor as you do with those other two headphones, and that's something that I personally really enjoy. So for me, I thought the Arya was the least engaging of the three on this track. Not that it was bad, it still sounded phenomenal, but it's just it loses some of the intimacy and some of the edge again that the 8XX brings, and it doesn't have the intimacy that the clears do. I did feel like the Arya, when I was listening to it, just seemed to be like the most linear of the three, where the clears I feel like is maybe a little more mid-focused, and the 8XX just kind of, it does its own thing with some peaks and valleys and things like that, but it is a really interesting listen. But the Arya, I feel like the Arya Stealth is just like, it's a super linear headphone. Okay, so track number 2 was by Sting, and this was called What Could Have Been, and this is off the League of Legends Arcane series soundtrack, which that's a great series and a great soundtrack. I definitely recommend you check that out. And this was just a song that it just really had me hooked after I watched that series. So first on this one, I listened to the Arya Stealth. So my impressions with the Arya Stealth was, again, it's great width on it. I thought that sub bass was quite noticeable on this, definitely more so on the Arya than on the other two headphones. Lots of great texture to the bass. I thought that the violins that are kind of off to the side in this just sounded just perfect on the Arya. I just really hooked me on that. Great presentation. Just again, great linearity throughout the frequency response, but I still felt that I was missing a little bit of bite to the sound. So I do feel like the Arya Stealth kind of rolls off just a little bit in those upper frequencies and doesn't give you that same just top end texture and just a little bit of bite. You don't want too much, but a little bit of bite can be a good thing though. So with the 8XX, I felt like I was closer to Sting. Like I just felt like his vocals were more intimate. I definitely noticed more of a bite that I'm talking about here on those upper frequencies. And again, that might sound like a bad thing, but for me, it just adds like a little bit more texture to the violin, a little bit more texture to Sting's vocals, and it really it brings me in and just engages me a little bit more than the Arya does on that track. So I do feel like the 8XX definitely has more energy in the mids and the highs than the Arya does. And, but it doesn't have that same impact with the bass or sub bass. I wrote down here in my notes, you can hear the bass and sub bass, but you can't really feel it. Moving on to the clears, I noted that it lacks the width of the other two. I noted that it lacks the sub bass of the other two. I do again notice a more mid-focused presentation here. I thought that it had a little bit more bite than the Arya, but not as much bite and information and texture on the upper frequencies as the 8XX. I also noted that the clear doesn't separate as well as the 8XX or the Arya. So I noted for this track that both the Arya and the clears are easier to listen to, but again, do I like that better? I don't think so. I, again, like a little bit of that bite to the upper frequencies there. Sorry, I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but that's one of the real standout features of the 8XX, and I know that maybe is a turnoff for some people, but in a lot of instances, I think it can be really engaging. Okay, track number 3 was Labrinth. Jealous of the Rain. And again, this is just it's a very vocal centric song, and this is just, it's a vocals and piano mainly, and this is one that I just, in the past year, I just love this track, and I just kept listening to it over and over and over again, and I feel like it's one that has a lot of emotion in it, and I like to feel that emotion when I'm listening, okay? So this time I started with the clears, and I just wrote a couple of simple things. I put, when he's singing, his vocals are like right in your head, and I put, it's really hard to fault it. It sounded phenomenal. Very difficult to fault the clear on this track. Oh, I should take the time to mention here that my chain was the Apple Lossless Music to a Socris 2541 to the Gen 1 chip Mjolnir. Okay, so that was my chain for all of these. With the Arya SE, I noted that in this song, the piano was noticeably further away. I thought that the vocalist was still pretty in your head, but maybe just a step back from what the presentation of the clear was. Bass was certainly more present with the Arya than the clears. I thought that the Arya was certainly better separated than the clears as well on this track, and I noted that I would definitely take the Arya over the clears, and that's saying something because I really enjoyed the track when I was listening to it on the clears. To the 8XX, I thought, Labrinth, he was again back right in my head with his vocals with the 8XX. And I just noted that I thought that with the 8XX, it was better separated than the other two, even better than the Arya. And I thought that I was hearing these little ticks and things in the track that I just did not even pick up on with the clear or the Arya. So I think it's pretty clear that the 8XX, just with that little more upper, just has more information in those upper frequencies where you can pick up some of those little more nuanced things. It's so well separated and images so well that it just does that just phenomenally well. I made the note that with the 8XX, I just feel like I'm there, like I'm in the track. Whereas with the Arya, even though I feel like it's got the same kind of width and separation stuff going on, it just doesn't, I feel like there's something between me and the music, not the way I feel with the 8XX. Okay, the last track that I listened to was Alana Henderson. She's a cellist and a great singer as well, and it's her track that's called Wax and Wane. So a lot of, high female vocals combined with, a cello and some other sounds, but those are the two main focuses of this song. I noted that, there's good bite to the cello and to her voice. I noted that, again, it feels really wide. I just noted that I could hear every single little pluck, that's going on in the song, on the cello and things, and I noted that just that there's texture everywhere, totally throughout the whole frequency range, just tons and tons of texture and information, but I did note, again, that I could hear the bass more than I could feel the bass. With the Arya, I noted, again, it's smoother than the 8XX. I noted that I didn't feel like it had as much information on the top end. I noted that, again, you could feel the bass more with the Arya. And, I put down, again, it's hard to fault it when you're listening to it, but it just doesn't engage me the same way that the 8XX does. With the clear, I'm going back again to a little more mid-bass focus. I felt like the cello sounded a little bit more full, and I thought that her vocals sounded a little bit more full, but I'm not quite sure it was accurate. I was questioning it when I was listening to it. So there's definitely a little bit more of a mid focus there and a little bit more weight to the mids. Is that accurate? I don't know. I felt like, oddly enough, I felt like she, with the clears, felt a little bit back further than the other two headphones, which is pretty much the opposite of all the other songs, where I thought the clear was a more intimate listen. Again, though, the clear definitely is not as wide as those other two headphones are. And I just noted on this track that I didn't feel like I was getting the same amount of information with the clears that I was with the Arya and the 8XX. So, that's all my listing that I did, and I had to I narrowed it to 4 tracks. I didn't want to make this too terribly long. It's already going longer than I had really planned it to be. So where does this put us with these 3 wonderful headphones? Because don't get me wrong, they are all excellent and wonderful headphones, and I could see people loving any of these or taking one over any of the other ones. So what are the strengths of each of these headphones, and when might you pick one over the other? Well, if you're just looking for pure information with resolution, separation, and you don't mind a little bit of bite in the upper ends of mids and in your treble, then for me, I think my favorite of the bunch just consistently is the 8XX. This headphone, when the note that I made about the 8XX is I feel like this is like the magic school bus of headphones, right? And so what do I mean by that? I mean, I feel like it just takes me there, right? If you imagine, Magic School Bus, they shrink down and they go in the human body and do all this stuff, or, things like that. It just gets you into it. And is it perfectly accurate? I don't think so. Is it linear as the Arya? Definitely not. So it's certainly, I can see why people wouldn't want the 8XX, but for me, the fact that you can buy this headphone for like $650 right now in the used market, what a value, what a bargain. That headphone is just tremendous headphone. The clears, if the 8XX has more of a bite, or you're bite averse, right, with those upper frequencies, if you're adverse to a little bit of sharpness, but you still like an intimate, and you want some energy to things, you like a mid focus, then you might be looking more at the clears, right? They're easy to drive, they sound good off everything, and their price now, I mean, for the OGs, you're pretty much looking at like $700-ish, or even maybe a little bit lower than that if you keep an eye out, okay? So for me, I do love the clears, and I do tend to like a little bit of a mid focus, but they don't engage me the same way the 8XX does. But again, if you don't like that bite and sharpness, you might look at the clears. Now, the Aryas are, again, a phenomenal headphone. Again, if you want the width like the 8XX has and the separation, but you don't want as much bite or sharpness up top, that's when maybe I would reach for the Arya. Or if you really like to feel your bass, then I think the Arya is probably a better choice. A lot of times when I was listening to Arya, gosh, it's just always really hard to fault it. It's just a super linear, smooth, just accurate, it's a great sounding headphone. I just don't feel like it has the same spice, or it just doesn't pull me in the way the 8XX pulls me in. And maybe if you were going to do really long listening sessions, or if you were going to listen all day long, the Arya might be a safe bet, because it does do a lot of things right, and it's just smooth and linear and accurate, and and also it sounds pretty much good on everything too. Whereas like the 8XX, I feel like you're definitely going to have to find your amps that you like with this. And I didn't do this. I wanted to use the Mjolnir because I think it's a good solid state amp that does well with a lot of different things. But I mean, you can tweak. Note that with the 8XX, you can do some tweaking with some tubes and stuff like that, and you can tune it a little bit more, as well, as more so than maybe the other two headphones. Again, wrapping this all up, I hope I'm giving an accurate presentation of which one of these you might reach for if you're looking at any of these models. Again, for me, I think the 8XX is the one that just suits my preference, at least at this point in time, more than any of the others. And the fact, again, that you can get it for less than $700 on the used market, and that's not a rare occurrence. Like, I see them on sale all the time. And I'm just a reminder that mine is sticker modded, so I've removed all the stickers, so it should be very similar to an 800S at this point in time. And man, it's just a great engaging headphone, as long as you don't mind that little bit of bite that it's got. But personally, I think it adds to the experience. So I hope this was helpful. If you like these types of videos, let me know in the comments if you like these type of comparisons. They're a little bit more difficult to do just because they take a lot of time to really focus and listen, to tracks over and over again. But if it's something that you find is helpful, or a lot of people find is helpful, I might do that a little bit more often in the future. So subscribe, definitely more headphone reviews and videos and comparisons coming in the future, along with like DACs and amps and things like that. I do have a Patreon link down below if you'd like to support the channel in that way, or use any of those affiliate links that are down there if you want to buy one of these headphones new, and that will help me out as well and support the channel. But as always, I suggest buying things used and looking on the used market. So I've got some links down there to places that I shop around on the used market as well. So definitely check those out if you're trying to snag a good deal on one of these headphones. I hope it helps. Thank you for your time. I will hopefully see you in the next one.